Good afternoon. Well, the more eagle-eyed among you will notice that I'm not actually on the Gain today. Hold on. Oh, it's gorgeous. No, I'm going to do a review. I've owned the bike for about 3 months. I put on 2,000 kilometres in the first 2 months, so I've got an idea of what it's like. But also, I'm a crazy researching fool, so I've researched a lot. So hopefully I can pass on something to you if you're looking to buy a Gain or any other Ebikemotion-equipped bike, particularly second-hand. So the first thing I've got to say is I love my Orbea Gain. It's a fantastic bike, and for me at my level of fitness or ability or whatever, it's exactly right. They do talk about the Ebikemotion, now Mahle, or Mahle, probably German. They do talk about the system being just enough. Well, I do find it to be just enough, but I think some care will need to be taken from riders who are maybe not quite so fit. It's designed for people who are just coming back into riding, maybe after an illness, or maybe they're getting a little bit older and they can't keep up with the group rides anymore. That is kind of perfect, but some of those riders might be slightly heavier, like myself, or slightly less fit, and I want to tell you whether I think the Gain is good for you as well. Now, those who usually watch my channel will know that I haven't done this before, I haven't done a review before, and they'll also know that because I don't have any subscribers, this is just me. It's just my opinion about this bike, this fantastic bike. But most of the review will be done on the bike, because it's the best place to show you what it's about. Now, I bought my bike second hand, but it can be a bit of a maze. There are certain things that you might need to know about before buying any Ebikemotion-equipped bike. Now, I'm only going to tell you about the certain things which are specific to the Ebikemotion bikes, in particular the battery. The battery is the first thing that you need to know is okay before going ahead with the purchase. The battery itself is difficult to assess, but you can check a few things. Now, the best way of doing that is before even going to see a bike, you download the Mahle Ebikemotion app on your phone. So when you actually go and see one of the bikes, you can turn the app on and it will connect to the bike if the system is switched on, whether you're its owner or not. And using the app, you can actually assess how well the battery is doing. Now, you do this by asking the seller to have the battery fully charged before you arrive. And when you arrive, you'll be able to turn on the app. It'll tell you how many kilometers the bike has done. So that's another fantastic thing. If he says, oh, I've only been out a couple of times on it, and there's 10,000 kilometers showing on the app, you know he's a lying so-and-so, and you can either walk away or you can negotiate the price. But the other thing the app shows you is the state of the battery. Now, if the battery is fully charged, it's a 36 volt system, a good battery will be registering fully charged over 41 volts. Ideally, well, perfect would be about 41.6. Now, that's a battery that isn't brand new, but has been slightly broken in, and they actually do improve from first use. But anything over 41 is pretty good. You won't be worrying about anything. Now, if that fully charged battery is only registering perhaps 36 volts, well, you're going to need to start thinking about buying a new internal battery. And that might be something you want to look at to see whether you can even afford before you start out. Because the biggest and most expensive thing that can go wrong with these bikes is the battery. Now, I was very lucky with my bike. There were quite a few, strangely, there were quite a few for sale at the same time. And the one that really caught my eye was the D10, because I weigh a lot, so I'm not looking for carbon. Why do I need to spend another probably 1,000 second hand for a carbon bike when I should just cut out the cake? So I was looking for an aluminium frame, and the D10 is top of the range. It's got Ultegra group set, everything is Ultegra, it's hydraulic disc brakes, all sorts of bells and whistles I've never had before. So it's the one that caught my eye. And the guy who was selling it proclaimed there was only 1,250 kilometers ridden on it. So, surprise, surprise, I checked out using my app, and in fact he'd only done 855 kilometres. So obviously I'm not going to quibble on the price, it's virtually brand new. But when I did get home, I checked him out on Strava. Now if you don't know what Strava is, I can't help you. But I checked him out on Strava, and he had actually done, I added all up his rides, and he had done 1,250 kilometres, but the rest he'd done on rollers. So the system's not on. Maybe there's a tiny bit more wear and tear in the chain, or the... not a lot else really with 1,250 kilometres. So I was very happy to go ahead, and I did pay him the full price. So though the state of the battery could be something that concerns you, there is a slight get around. Now the get around is by buying a range extender. Now the proper Mahle range extenders are in fact small battery chargers. They just recharge the battery as your battery is going flat. They're extraordinarily expensive, but really it's a very small sized charger. It doesn't give you a great deal of extra range, but at least it is the official system. There are other systems available which use a second battery in parallel. Now, the great thing about using two batteries in parallel is that it halves the strain on either battery. They work together to double your range but leave the voltage the same. So you can either drop the money and go to this company, actually in Spain, but they're still 450 euros, but at least it's a system that now is known to work, and it works in parallel, so actually better than the Ebikemotion Mahle range extenders, which are just a battery charger. So really it's no different from having another charging cycle on your battery. There's no help with the wear and tear on the bike, but a battery run in parallel will help. The other thing I wanted to talk about is spoke breakages. If you look online, it's a common complaint that riders of all weights and all types of terrain that they're riding over are breaking spokes, particularly on the initial X35 system. There's a later system called the X35 Plus, I believe, and one of the things they looked at was the fact that the spokes were breaking often, and I believe the reason for that is because the motor, the hub motor, was made without being robust enough to get sufficient tension in those rear spokes, and so they would come loose and they would break. And this is exactly what I found. I bought the bike and I was pretty despondent when I broke the first spoke, but I thought that happens. I checked the tension of the other spokes and there were 4 others that were really loose. You could rattle them. It was appalling. And I thought, previous guy's shocking at maintenance, but he's done so few kilometres, maybe it doesn't matter. Anyway, I tightened those spokes up and I found that within the next month 4 other spokes broke. Now I'm hoping they were those 4. I believe that to be the case because in all the kilometres I've done since I've had no more breakages. But it's a simple thing. You just need to check that the tension's on those spokes every so often. I mean, it's easily done. You just ping them with your finger. If they'll make the same tone or thereabouts, it's probably fine. If one of them is obviously bonk rather than a ding, then it's something to learn if you don't know how to. It's just to tighten up those spokes again, just so that they're roughly the same tone will do. It's a minute job. A spoke tightening spanner is a few euros. Your local bike shop will do it in no time, but it's just something you can do yourself and it saves a lot of hassle. And if you even break one, fixing it is a 10-minute job if it's on the drive side. It's a 5-minute job if it's on the non-drive side. I think most of the rest that I wanted to say I'll do from on the bike, because that's why you're buying it. You're not buying it to have some bearded twat talk about it in a garden chair on his terrace with the sun right in his eyes. You want to see how it goes, and yeah, it goes really, really well. Okay, so we're on to the first hill of the day. This is one of my standards, so I know it quite well. It's just under 5 kilometres with an average of 4.2. So what we're going to do, we're going to stick it in level 2 and we're going to see how easily we go up this. So for the bulk of this climb, The percentage gradient is somewhere between 3 and 6%, and at the very top a nasty little bit, just a couple of 100 meters of 9. So I've just gone past 3 kilometers, and as you can tell I've got a little bit of I'm a little bit out of puff, but not too bad. So I need to tell you about the 3 power levels. Each one is set to provide a different amount of power. Level 1 is a maximum of 100 watts, level 2 is 175 watts, and level 3 is 250 watts. Now each one of those levels is customizable, so you can have anywhere between 0 and 100% of each one of those levels. So if you set 50% on level 1, you're getting 50 watts of power, and if you set it to 100% of level 3, you'll get the full 250 watts. You can also set them to presettings, which the Mahle smart bike app has preset for eco, urban and sport, all with varying levels of power at those 3 levels. I've currently got mine set to the sport mode, which is rather more than I'm used to. And you can see I'm getting more out of puff now. On a 6% section, still in level 2. Right, we're on the 8% section now, still in level 2, and I'm in first gear. Now I'm thinking I should be able to push up through this at this level, which is actually quite promising, because obviously we still have the level 3 250 watt band to use. So this is pretty hard work. It's still 8%. My cadence is whatever I can keep it at, and I'm doing 10 kilometers an hour. So I'm at the top of that climb now. Wasn't too bad, got pretty puffed at the end. One of the things I've just been reminded of, when you do start to clear the summit, you probably want to turn the motor off, because what it's going to try and do is to take you as quickly as it can up to its 25 kilometer an hour limit. And when you reach the top of a hill, you might be quite content just to stop and take in a view for a few minutes. Check the Garmin, check the numbers, or just, you know, have a minor stroke and collapse like I do. But seeing as my favourite climb ends in my favourite view, I do like to stop if I can. It's always worth it. So one of the places where the Orbea Gain is particularly reassured is on descents. Now apparently it's to do with the battery in the down tube. So we're on the second climb now, similar to the first. It's just under 5 kilometers, but this time it's 5.2 on average, and near the top it's a long stretch of 8, 9, 10%, and at the bottom here it's obviously quite a bit easier. But on that top stretch I'm going to indulge myself and pop it on level 3, which so far I've not actually used. So it should be quite interesting, I hope so. Well, I must have got that wrong, because this hill has gone straight up to 8% and it's staying there. So I'm on level 2, which at 80% of 175 watts is 140. Pressing the top tube button twice, you should release the full 250 watts available. Well, let's try it. Have to go no hands going uphill doing it, but let's try it. Wait, you know, not very good at no hands up and 8%. Need practice. Okay, it's definitely easier. I'm still in first. My cadence has picked up a little, and the speed maybe by 1 or 2 kilometers an hour. Certainly doesn't feel like an extra 110 watts of power, and therein lies the problem with the Ebikemotion motor. It's a 250 watt motor, which is a nominal amount. The amount a motor gives out is dependent upon the volts and how many amps are released to it by the controller. Now this controller does limit the motor to roughly 250 watts, but there are other systems which use a perfectly legal 250 watt motor but actually release 10, 12, 15 amps. So that's double what the Ebikemotion controller can provide. Now, having a controller of this size is a perfectly reasonable thing to do, and I'm finding for me actually at this, I'm still doing 8%. I've got a puff enough to talk to you. I'm in first, I'm taking it easy now, but I'm still just cruising up here 10 kilometers an hour. So if we're expecting some sort of motor cycle, this isn't it. This helps you up a hill. It doesn't do everything. I think it is just enough. I was a bit concerned when I first bought the bike that it wasn't, but I hadn't actually set it to the maximum power output nor used it, so that's the first time I've used it. We topped out at 10% there, and I'm at the top now. That was all right. I won't have a breather, but I will show you the view from the top of this one as well. They're all, sorry, a bit close. They're all a bit, well, they're all fabulous. On to the second downside for the heavier rider on the Orbea Gain or Ebikemotion-equipped bikes is that the motor has a sweet spot, and that sweet spot is when it produces its full power, and that on this system is between 15 and 25 kilometers an hour. So if it's a very steep hill, or if you're quite a big guy, which means you go quite slowly up a slighter hill, the lesser incline, you're not getting the full power. So on this hill, which is 3%, I'm doing 17 kilometers an hour. It's a breeze, because that motor is working perfectly at this speed, and it's given me a nice lot of power. So if your hills are, or rather if you're struggling up hills of say 2, 3, 4%, this could be ideal. But if what you've always hankered for is to have its maximum, your bike to give you its maximum assist over those hills which have been taunting you 8, 9, 10 or more percent, it will help you. You saw that earlier. It will help you, but you might need more, or rather a motor that gives you more at slower speeds. Other guff from the internet you can ignore. This is a simple system. It works on a pedal assist system. As long as those pedals are turning, you're turning the cassette at the back of the bike, and that is where the sensor is. If the cassette is turning, i.e. you're turning it with your pedals, the power will come on, and if you've got it set to 100% of 250 watts and you just turn the pedals, it will give you the full amount. Doesn't matter what cadence you set yourself. You might find a certain climb easier because you've set yourself a certain cadence. It's nothing to do with the bike, that's just you. There's no torque sensor. Like I say, it's a simple system, but it does work well. And there were other things on the internet, on reviews, which irritated me. Now, some of them were that whoever had reviewed the Gain had only had the bike for an afternoon, maybe even a week, and they used to complain about things like how difficult it is to use the iWalk button on the top tube, and how you've got to look down to use it. Yeah, that lasts maybe a couple of days, couple of rides, or if you're particularly stupid, maybe a week. But you you don't look down. So there's other things I can tell you about this particular bike, which is the Orbea Gain D10. I've just stuck it back on level 3 so I can talk to you about a couple of other things. Hydraulic disc brakes, if you've not tried them, they really are better. There's no argument. Before I had very good rim brakes. They were 105 rim brakes. Great. I was always one of the people who would say, discs, you know, you don't need them. Because I always felt that the rims could slow me down enough to get round corners, which they did. Well, the discs can stop you. I never really had the impression that going down a big hill, that those rim brakes would ever actually stop me. Anyway, these do. And the other things, simple things, it's got carbon forks and a carbon seat post. And again, if you've not tried those, the difference going over rough roads together with the 28mm tyres is immeasurable. It truly is. It came with a Pro Logo Kappa saddle. That's just an instrument of torture, so get that changed straight away, which you probably would anyway, to be fair. The tyres, really chunky tyres. They are Kenda Crankfish, which I don't think you'll find anywhere else. When I look them up, they're the preferred option for wheelchair athletes who play wheelchair rugby. Now, if you want to look up that sport, you get an idea of just what these tyres are probably best at. And if you're one of those people who are worried that the aluminium frame would be a bit heavy, well, wait for the Crankfish to wear down, which will take forever. They're incredibly hard wearing and very puncture resistant, not through any clever Kevlar strips, but just because they're massively heavy lumps of rubber. You can actually save half a kilo by swapping out your Crankfish to a more modern and technologically advanced tyre. So that's the steepest part of the ride. So that's 13%. I've still got it back on level 2. I'm in first. Well, it's 10% here. I think I'm getting a bit more used to it during the ride. You know, it's harder at the beginning than it is towards the end. So we're on the last big hill of the day. It's another 8%. It's got hairpins. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was range. Range is how long is a piece of string. It depends upon the weight of the rider. It depends upon the percentage of the hills that you're climbing, the length of the hills that you're climbing, how much effort you put in. That can change on the same ride on a day-to-day basis. If you're putting in a bit more, the Orbea might be putting in a little bit less. So my longest ride so far on this bike is 135 kilometers. I had over 50% of the battery left because I didn't use it much. So by that you could say I could do nearly 300 kilometers. Well, no, my arse would give out before that. So today I've ridden it in a very different way. I've deliberately tried to find at least 3 long hills with 8 to 10% climbs within them, and my battery level has just dipped below 50%. I've only done 27 kilometers, but I've climbed 682 meters. So if I carried on like this, you could say I could climb 1300 meters, but only 54 kilometers. So it totally depends on you, your effort, the angle and length of the climbs. So it's a piece of string. I'd say without the range extender battery, which is something that might be for the future, this is a really good system. But you're not going to be going on hilly 100 kilometer rides, unless of course you're the sort of rider that didn't really need electric assist bike in the first place. So this power button, it changes colour depending on the level of charge. So at the moment it's amber, which means that I've used more than 50% charge, but less than 75%. That changes from white to green as it goes anywhere between 100 down to 75%. Between 70 and 50 it's green, between 50 and 25 it's amber, between I think 15 and 25 it's red, under 15 it flashes red, and under 10 it flashes red really fast, saying please stop, I've had enough, it's time to go home. But if that level of detail isn't enough for your range anxiety and you're worried that you won't be able to get home, there is of course an app that you can download which you can add a customizable field to your bike computer like your Garmin, and you can look down and it'll tell you exactly what the state of charge is on the battery as a percentage. I don't worry about that. In fact, I try not to look at the button at all. There's enough things to worry about just by looking around, like, oh, there's some mud on the road, or I don't know, I wonder what I'm having for tea. But if you don't have a Garmin or otherwise customizable bike computer, the Mahle smart bike app itself also works as a bike computer, and one of the fields on there actually does tell you the exact percentage of the battery remaining. Now, as if by magic, the headwind has gone up for the last rather flat piece to get back home, so I can tell you about that. And quite frankly, if there's one place where this Ebikemotion excels, it's in a stiff headwind, because it will try its utmost to keep you at 25 kilometers an hour, and if the headwind is anything like this, well, it's not necessarily that easy, but with this system it is. So that's the job done for the day. It's 828 meters, 47.5 kilometers, and 24% of the battery left. Now on the ride, I talked about the motor having a sweet spot where it produces its most power, where it's happiest, between 15 and 25 kilometers an hour. Now that can be a problem going up hills, as I've said, but there are ways around it, and the best way to avoid that loss of power is to never get below 15 kilometers an hour. If you see a hill, why not attack it? Get up off the pedals, go for it, push, push, push. And the motor will be giving you its most assistance if you keep to a higher pace. So if you attack that hill, push up it, you may well get over the top before that battery starts bogging down at lower speeds. And the other way to avoid this bogging down, if you are already bogged, is again, you've got to go for it. So you're crawling your way up the hill, grinding away, change down a couple of gears, get up off the pedals, and start lifting that speed. And as you lift the speed, the motor will start giving you more power, and you'll go faster, and then you get more speed and you're going faster, and all of a sudden you're going up that same hill that you were feeling bogged down in, grinding away, you're flying up it. It's the same hill. It's worth trying, and it's a very, very nice feeling as well, because you feel so powerful. I should just mention gravel. I did make it's almost like clickbait. It was a video called Gravel versus Gain, and it's had hundreds of views. And I think most people are just saying, oh, it's exactly what I want to know. And then it's me talking again. But briefly, I would say gravel is where the Gain really comes into its own. It's got clearance for 40mm tyres. I bought some very cheap from Decathlon, 38 mils. I put them on, lowered the pressure down to 50 pounds PSI, and away I went. And I've done hundreds of kilometres now on gravel. I hadn't really ridden gravel before, and it's a fantastic experience. It's something new. It's always an adventure, and really the Gain is perfect. It's so well built, nothing rattles or makes a noise. And of course, because it's got this model anyway has got the carbon forks, and it's got a carbon seat post, and with those soft squishy tyres it's like having a full suspension mountain bike. Obviously not really, but it's good, it's really good, and it's almost like getting two bikes for one. You put the road bikes on and it acts immaculately on the road. You put the gravel tyres on and all of a sudden you're going down rough tracks without a care in the world. So you really could buy one bike instead of two, and that will make you far more popular with your husband or wife. Something to consider. But at the end of the day, what you've bought isn't an electric motorbike. You've bought a bike which will give you just enough. So I hope this has been a useful review for you. If it has been, like and subscribe. Never said that before. But yeah, you could if you like. Most of my videos are me nattering away with some beautiful scenery from southern Catalonia in Spain in the background. Or if you're lucky, I'll actually turn the camera around and you can see it firsthand. I'll still be chatting away, but they look quite nice, and it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. So I hope you'll join me in another ride. But thanks for watching. Last thing, if you've got any questions, put them in the comments below, and I'll see what I can do. I might be able to help. Never know. I did mean about the content of this video, not just whether you're in love with your mother-in-law or something like that. Just try and keep it on subject, shall we? Thanks for watching.